ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰਜ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਬੋਝ ਹੇਠ ਦੱਬੇ ਹੋ? ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਕੀ ਕਰੋ?
ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਮਾੜਾ ਅਸਰ ਪਾ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਮੁਸ਼ਕਿਲ 'ਚ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕਰਜ਼ੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਘਟਾ ਕੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਰਕਮ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਿਸ਼ਤਾਂ 'ਚ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਰਜ਼ੇ ਤੋਂ ਮੁਕਤ ਕਰਾ ਕੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਜੀਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
1866790884 ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨਜ਼, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪਰੇਸ਼ਾਨੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਥੀ।
1983 ਤੋਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਫ਼ਤਰਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੋਨ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਸੈਟਅਪ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਐਨਸੈਟਲ ਇੱਕ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਪਰਮੰਨਿਆ ਨਾਂ ਹੈ। Panasonic surveillance cameras, computers ਤੇ telephone cabling, call center solutions, conference phone, intercom, speakers, wireless headsets, video conferencing, IP technology ਤੇ voicemail systems ਵੀ ਉਪਲਬਧ ਹਨ। ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਕਮਿਊਨੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਲਈ Panasonic equipment ਵਰਤਦੇ Ancetal communication ਨੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ। Panasonic ਦੇ ਸਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਗਾਰੰਟੀ ਤੇ Ancetal professionals ਦੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਲਓ। Once again, welcome back to the program. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਇੰਦਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਸਥ ਨਾਲ। ਇੰਦਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਸਥ ਲੰਗਾਰਾ ਕਾਲਜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੋਸ਼ੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਡਿਪਾਰਟਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਇਹ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਸਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਬੇਝਿਜਕ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੇਰਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਸਲਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕਿਉਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ passionate ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। Let's welcome Indira Prahst. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
A little bit about yourself, Indira, that we know that you're a sociology head of the department at Langara. But apart from that, we have been seeing you wherever when we are talking for justice, any rallies or interfaith meetings or all these kind of things. So what prompted you to jump into all these issues?
It's actually a question I ask myself. It's not something that I actually entered into consciously. I think a lot of it comes from my background, myself being half German and half Indian, and struggling with identities.
Right.
How I got into this actually is when I was teaching a racism class. A Sikh student had asked whether or not the 1984 Sikh genocide was a genocide. It was called a riot.
Right.
And I wasn't able to respond. That was over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I researched it. And I also would participate in Baisakhi parades. And I questioned what the meaning was of some of the political elements.
Right.
And so that led me to my journey to India and learning a little bit more about some facts that still continue to be a mystery.
Okay, and that's what that is how you jumped into this, and now you're a part of it, kind of thing. Wherever things are to be talked, you go there and talk about it passionately. So what is the basic issue you are finding right now? Because we know 84 was a tragedy and genocide or riot, so a lot of things have been talked about it. But when you delve deep into it, what have you observed?
Well, I've observed that the significance of a history, especially when we look at the diaspora here in Canada. When I was in Punjab, I came across different people, and some did feel constrained to speak openly about certain historical pasts. But I think what we see as well is when you're away from your home country, you hold on to an identity that doesn't exist as strongly here.
Right.
And so I noticed that the Sikh youth in particular are trying to identify as Sikh. And in order to move forward, they have to go into their history. And my mother, who is an academic who deals with Holocaust survivors, I see that these Holocaust survivors have a lot of spaces to discuss what happened to them.
Right.
And I notice a systematic silencing. And it matters because I still see the pain in the eyes of Sikhs. When I was in Tilak Vihar, many can't move forward. So why does it matter today? It matters for a variety of reasons.
Right.
Number one, Sikhs need their history to learn who they are. And I think right now what we're seeing is a real concern about losing connection to Gurbani and Sikhi. And part of that is connected to the structure of not only India but the world itself.
Right.
And so there's a stronger attachment. And I think secondly, the grandparents are now having to talk about the history because their grandchildren are feeling much more comfortable to ask questions. So they're more educated, I think, as well.
Okay.
Obviously, we also have movements right now. When I was in India, they were saying the movement for independence isn't in India, it's right here in Surrey.
Right.
And I think what's relevant around this question of sovereignty is that some people believe that the structure of one's homeland itself is not allowing an unfolding of an identity.
Okay.
And I think that's important, and it matters to me because I grew up in Montreal during the Quebec separatist movement.
Right.
And in Canada, we have freedom to at least talk about what it is that holds us back from expressing our identity.
Right.
And I've seen some major changes as well in local events, just like last 2 weeks ago with the Sikh Youth
Right.
at a concert.
Okay. So, it's great what you are saying, and the Sikhs need to be a part of their identity, which probably they are losing. But on the other hand, there's another thought which goes around, which says that why is there a need to bring Punjab over here, and especially to the youth who haven't seen that doom which existed in Punjab for some time. So there comes a point then when you go and talk and tell about the historical impact of that particular time. Why do you think it is important to bring that factor over here also?
It's very important because it's that the Sikh youth will first of all never know what happened.
Right.
They're romanticizing in many ways the real atrocities we can't even watch on videos.
Right.
It matters because the sacrifices that were made, the blood that was shed, and people still suffering because of an ideology that was to be able to create a state or to live in an India where they were able to have control over various aspects of their faith, be it language, even the partitioning of parts of Punjab. I think what gets lost is the ideology of people who fought.
Right.
And these stories mustn't be watered down. And I think it's really important for the youth to see it in the raw so they can recognize how much sacrifice was made and how privileged they are. And so many youth feel an obligation as well now to do what they can do to continue to create structures for whether it is an independent state, which we may never see in our lifetime, but they should have the freedom to talk about it, because if we don't create those spaces, we will have certain people and communities control how that should be achieved. And that should be a collective participation and not controlled by particular groups or people. And at this point, that's what's happening. So we need to open that space, and that's my goal.
Okay, and when we talk about the groups and groupism which is faced right now, and you going and talking and interacting with different strata of the society, what are you observing at that victim mentality? Aren't you finding that just that victim mentality is becoming more heavier, and the solution-oriented thought is not coming forward, or people are really thinking in this direction also?
I think 5-6 years ago that idea of victim was played out, and it needed to be, because Sikhs were always seen as the terrorist perpetrator.
Right.
And so one had to show they were victim. But that victimhood is being very much is against Sikhi, because when I was in Tilak Vihar, the women said my husbands weren't victims, they were martyrs, because many of them actually, fought, confronted it.
Yeah.
But many people have started to critique it at academic conferences. I've spoken, and I think some of the Sikh youth academics, I try to make them mindful of it. I think the problem, though, is a mentality of mafia.
Okay.
This is exactly why movements failed in the 1990s.
Right.
And if these structures continue today, we're not going to see a sort of a structure. The gurus never had this hierarchical structure of decision making. So the Sikh youth need to start to have freedom to actually question their own leaders. That was taboo in the movement. It's still taboo in some Gurdwara settings. And so to have youth recognize that they have a right to actually question when something's going to be destructive in the past, that's where change is going to happen. But I think your question is a really important one, because when I went to a concert, it was sort of in solidarity for human rights. I saw a significant change. 5 years ago, there was anger, emotion, victimhood, and this time it was reflectivity. It was not emotion, but let's unify. Let's be unified. Otherwise, the movement can't move forward. And when I say movement, it means many things. Justice for the widows, freedom to have spaces to talk about issues, and possibly an independent state in whose lifetime we don't know.
Right. So towards the end, you have mentioned a lot to the solutions what you have talked, but as an independent observer, what would be your message to the Sikhs at large? Because right now, as you have touched the youth also, but what about the elders? Because they are holding ground to their own thoughts, and everybody thinks that he or she is, whatever thought they are carrying on is the right thought. Nobody is willing to sit down, have a dialogue, exchange views, and then come to a consensus. So those different thoughts which are existing right now in the community are rather creating more confusion rather than bringing them into a united path.
I think what I really think is important to reflect on is one of the reasons why we are seeing so many problems, even within Gurdwaras, within every issue, is the leaders, some leaders have to ask themselves, in 10 years, what message and role modeling have I done for this generation of youth?
Right.
Have I shown them the path to suspend judgment? And what is the principled decision?
Right.
The problem is judgment and their own interpretation. And the biggest issue as well is ego.
Right.
And if one is asking for justice, one has to ask, am I doing this for the panth or for myself or the group?
Right.
And I think another big issue is how much am I reproducing the structure that is exactly what our gurus fought,
right.
what people in the movement sacrificed their lives from. Many innocent Sikhs sacrificed themselves, and that is this idea of control.
Right.
Until this control and ownership is not eradicated,
right.
they're not going to be useful leaders, and
Okay.
youth are actually now seeing that.
So as you have said, it's a time for reflection and also self-introspection and further planning what needs to be done in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you.